Welcome to Peaceful Stories. Today, we bring you the powerful and moving story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the most influential figures in American history and a leader whose life was dedicated to the fight for justice, equality, and civil rights. King's journey was one of profound courage, unwavering commitment, and a dream that inspired millions. From his beginnings in Atlanta, Georgia, to his final days in Memphis, Tennessee, Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy is marked by his relentless pursuit of equality and his enduring impact on the world. This is the full story of his life, achievements, and the tragic events that led to his assassination. Join us as we explore the incredible journey of Martin Luther King Jr., a man whose dream still lives on today. 1.1 Childhood and Family Background. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, as Michael King Jr., the second of three children. He was raised in a loving and religious household by his parents, Reverend Michael King Sr. and Alberta Williams King. King Sr. was a pastor at the Ebenezer Baptist Church, a role that Martin would later inherit. The King's family was deeply rooted in the Baptist faith, and it was in this environment that young Martin was first exposed to the power of the pulpit and the importance of community and spiritual leadership. His father, Michael King Sr., later changed both his and his son's name to Martin Luther King in honor of the Protestant reformer Martin Luther, signifying a deep connection to religious leadership and reform. 1.2 Early education and experiences of segregation. Growing up in the South, Martin Luther King Jr. was exposed to the harsh realities of racial segregation and discrimination from a young age. He attended segregated public schools in Atlanta and graduated from Booker T. Washington High School. Despite these challenges, King was a bright student, skipping both the 9th and 12th grades and enrolling at Morehouse College, a prestigious historically black college in Atlanta, at the age of 15. 1.3 Influences and Awakening to Social Injustice. During his time at Morehouse College, King was influenced by Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, the college president, who was a powerful advocate for racial equality and social justice. Dr. Mays became a mentor to King, encouraging him to view Christianity as a vehicle for social change. It was under Dr. Mays' mentorship that King began to see the church's potential role in challenging segregation and racism. After graduating with a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology in 1948, King went on to attend Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. At Crozer, he further developed his understanding of theology, ethics, and the philosophy of nonviolence. He was introduced to the works of Mahatma Gandhi, which would profoundly influence his approach to social activism. King graduated with a Bachelor of Divinity degree in 1951 and decided to continue his education, enrolling in a doctoral program at Boston University. The rise of a leader. King's path to civil rights leadership. 2.1 The Montgomery Bus Boycott. King moved to Montgomery, Alabama, in 1954 to become the pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. It was here, in 1955, that his leadership in the civil rights movement would begin to take shape. The arrest of Rosa Parks, a black seamstress, for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white passenger sparked the Montgomery Bus Boycott. King was elected as the leader of the newly formed Montgomery Improvement Association, the organization that would lead the boycott. For over a year, African Americans in Montgomery refused to ride city buses, demanding an end to segregation on public transportation. King's leadership during the boycott brought him national attention. He advocated for peaceful protest and nonviolent resistance, drawing on his theological background and the teachings of Gandhi. The boycott ended successfully in December 1956, when the Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. This victory established King as a prominent figure in the civil rights movement. 2.2 Founding of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. In 1957, King, along with other civil rights leaders, founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, an organization aimed at coordinating nonviolent protests against racial discrimination. King was chosen as the first president of the SCLC. Under his leadership, the SCLC sought to use nonviolent resistance to bring about social change. King traveled across the country, speaking out against segregation, injustice, and racial inequality, and building a network of allies committed to the cause of civil rights. 2.3 The Sit-in Movement and Freedom Rides. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, King and the SCLC supported various civil rights initiatives, including the sit-in movement, which began in 1960 when 4 African American students sat at a whites-only lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, and refused to leave. This act of defiance sparked similar protests across the South. King's advocacy and the SCLC's support helped to sustain the momentum of these protests. In 1961, King supported the Freedom Rides, where integrated groups of activists rode interstate buses into the segregated southern states to challenge the non-enforcement of Supreme Court rulings that desegregated public transportation. The Freedom Riders faced violent resistance, but their courage brought national attention to the civil rights struggle. 3.1 The Birmingham Campaign. In 1963, King and the SCLC focused their efforts on Birmingham, Alabama, a city known for its strict enforcement of segregation. The Birmingham Campaign aimed to desegregate public facilities and draw attention to the brutal treatment of African Americans in the South. The campaign began with sit-ins, boycotts, and marches. However, the city's police commissioner, Eugene Bull Connor, responded with violence, using fire hoses and police dogs against the protesters, many of whom were children. The violent images broadcast on national television shocked the world and galvanized support for the civil rights movement. During this campaign, King was arrested and wrote his famous Letter from Birmingham Jail, a powerful defense of nonviolent resistance to injustice. 3.2 The March on Washington and I Have a Dream speech. The success of the Birmingham campaign set the stage for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963. Organized by King and other civil rights leaders, the march was a massive peaceful demonstration that drew over 250,000 people to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. It was here at the Lincoln Memorial that King delivered his iconic I Have a Dream speech. In this speech, he articulated his vision of a future where people would be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. The March on Washington was a defining moment in the civil rights movement and helped build momentum for the passage of landmark civil rights legislation. 3.3 The Civil Rights Act of 1964. Following the March on Washington, King's efforts and the growing pressure from the civil rights movement contributed to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This landmark legislation, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, outlawed segregation in public places and banned employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It was one of the most significant legislative achievements in the fight for the Selma to Montgomery marches. In 1965, King and the SCLC turned their attention to voting rights. Despite the passage of the Civil Rights Act, many African Americans in the South were still denied the right to vote through discriminatory practices. King and other civil rights leaders organized a series of marches from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, to demand voting rights. The first march, known as Bloody Sunday, ended in violence when state troopers attacked the peaceful protesters with clubs and tear gas. The brutality of Bloody Sunday was broadcast across the nation, leading to widespread outrage and prompting President Johnson to call for comprehensive voting rights legislation. The subsequent marches, led by King, successfully reached Montgomery and further highlighted the demand for voting rights. The Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Selma marches were instrumental in the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was signed into law by President Johnson. The act aimed to eliminate barriers to voting for African Americans and was another major victory for the civil rights movement. King's leadership and the courage of the Selma marchers played a pivotal role in achieving this milestone. 4.3 Shifting focus to economic justice and the Vietnam War. In his later years, King began to expand his focus beyond racial discrimination to include issues of economic justice and opposition to the Vietnam War. He launched the Poor People's Campaign to address economic inequality and planned a mass protest in Washington, D.C., to demand better jobs, housing, and education for the nation's poor. King's opposition to the Vietnam War, expressed in his speech Beyond Vietnam, was controversial and led to criticism from both supporters and detractors, but he remained steadfast in his commitment to nonviolence and social justice. Final days in Memphis. In early 1968, King traveled to Memphis, Tennessee, to support a strike by African American sanitation workers who were demanding better wages and working conditions. King saw the strike as part of the larger struggle for economic justice and equality. He led a march in support of the workers that unfortunately turned violent, a rare occurrence in his campaigns. Determined to lead a nonviolent march, King returned to Memphis in April. On the evening of April 3, 1968, King delivered his final public speech, known as the "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech, at the Mason Temple in Memphis. In this speech, King spoke prophetically about the possibility of his own death, stating, "I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." 5.2 Assassination and Aftermath. On April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was fatally shot while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. The assassin was later identified as James Earl Ray, a fugitive with a history of criminal behavior. King was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. His death sent shockwaves across the nation and the world, leading to riots and mourning in cities across the United States. 5.3 Legacy and Impact. King's assassination marked a turning point in the civil rights movement, highlighting both the progress that had been made and the work that remained. In the years following his death, King's legacy continued to grow. He was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal. His birthday, January 15th, was designated a national holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, celebrated annually to honor his contributions to the fight for justice and equality. Martin Luther King Jr. left behind a legacy of hope, courage, and an unyielding commitment to justice. His life's work brought about profound changes in American society, helping to dismantle segregation and advance the cause of civil rights. King's philosophy of nonviolence and his vision of a world where all people are treated with dignity and respect continue to inspire generations. His words and actions remind us that the fight for justice is ongoing and that each of us has a role to play in building a more equitable and compassionate world. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you found this video informative, please like and subscribe to Peaceful Stories for more content like this. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on King's impact or suggestions for future topics. Let us continue to honor his memory by striving for justice, equality, and peace in our everyday lives. Thank you for watching this episode of Peaceful Stories. If you were moved by Martin Luther King Jr.'s story and believe in the importance of justice and equality, please hit the like button and share this video with others. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. Let us know in the comments what you think about Martin Luther King Jr.'s impact on history and any other topics you'd like us to explore. Together, we can continue to spread the message of peace, justice, and equality. Stay safe, take care, and we'll see you in the next video.